So, standard disclaimer: this video or any videos on my channel are not intended for children. They may include adult themes and strong language. So, now that we got that out of the way,
Let's hear it for strong language. Yay!
oh, I forgot to mute YouTube, so I'm not going. There we go. So, why don't each of you introduce yourself a bit?
Go ahead, Faye.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm Faye. I have a YouTube called Wonder Lady, and I have a bachelor's in English, and I'm a bit of a book buff. Your turn. I really hate introducing myself, so it's hard.
Well, Faye, you should also mention the artwork you do.
Oh,
And
yeah.
Unfreaking
I know
believable
you have
artwork. She
a
is
Patreon,
spectacular.
which is a place where people can contribute and see some of your artwork.
Yep. Um, I uh, I am a more of a hobbyist when it comes to art, but um, I have had really good influencers and teachers. My mom is um, the actual technician, But I hold my own, and
Yep.
people seem to really like it, and I'm grateful for that. So
Well,
as long
truly
as
some unique pieces and actually quite a wide variety of different styles.
thank you. I made some for somebody on Twitter. They haven't used any yet, but I'm kind of proud of them. So
Hey, Orla.
Hello.
Okay, Jen,
hello.
you want to say a bit about yourself?
Sure, there's not much to say. I have my YouTube channel, but we haven't reached 100 subs yet. So, as I promised, as soon as I hit 100 subs, we're going to start producing some content.
Uh huh.
Um, I'm just, tripping like fantastic around the net and jumping on panels here and there,
That's a
pretending
phrase
I'm
I haven't
smart.
heard for some years.
And Faye is has mad art skills. She is tremendous. You must see her work.
Thank you.
Okay, Orla, you want to say a bit about yourself?
Oh, I'm just the crazy person in the room.
Yeah, and since the subject came up last night, I probably should talk to you about this offline and how much you would want to take somebody out.
To dinner?
I've had the
No,
impression you might
no.
just do it for the fun of it, but
Sorry. Hmm.
well, anyway, that actually kind of goes into our topic for today of just the art of storytelling. And one of the things I do find interesting is how people have created these online personas and the backstories they create for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do have an online persona, obviously.
I think for a lot of people, getting online is, kind of in the same sense with the role playing games. Oh, my voice is not good today.
Well, yes and no. It depends if you're actively using a parody account or if you're just trying to talk to people.
Yeah, I found myself doing both and maybe kind of switching off from time to time. So I see in the side chat we've got Critical Cripple, Robert X, Nana, Math Pig. So nice turnout.
So what the heck do I know about storytelling? Nothing. What am I here for?
No, actually, you've been quite good about telling stories of your own experiences,
Mm, well,
and
I
you
try.
seem to have led a rather interesting life.
Oh, well, okay.
I recall you telling some stories about driving race cars.
uh, well, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
There's fun in that.
I think that's something most people don't get a chance to do, and it's interesting hearing about it. Um,
Now you're
yeah,
making me
Faye
think that I
is,
should have had more collisions and stuff when I was doing that, so I'd have more glorious things to talk about.
or you'd be dead.
Yeah. Hi, Angie.
Oh, hi, Angie.
Hi, Angie.
We're just getting started. We just got through the introduction, so you haven't really missed anything yet.
So, do you think people create their persona artificially online? Do you think, or
No,
do you think people are realistic and honest about who they are and stuff?
no.
It really depends because there was a study done that I would argue
Foley,
people
you're rather
do have
breaking
a
up on us.
tendency to be online because there's a protection. I suppose my connection is
Well,
probably
you got
silly.
better now. Yeah, you got better now. So,
A
well,
person's a person's
I'm
persona.
basically very open about who I am
Mhm.
and that, but I have also, created a backstory, a sort of mythology around my avatar
Mhm.
of the Triceratops character, which actually I am planning to make a video to explain that more in depth and my hashtag not all saurians.
Yes. Um, I think people's personas online, whether it's their, you know, I think people are a lot more complicated than just the face that they present to the public. Sometimes you go out with a smile when inside you're not smiling, but you put the smile on and you have your public face and you have your private face. And then when you're with, say, your lover, you have a different face. And when you're with your best friend, you have a different face. And some people might go, oh, well, you're not a genuine person. No, you just have different aspects of yourself that you share with other people. Like, Orla, you like, you're like goth. You know what I mean? You're gargoyle and Halloween and spooky and fun and
Yeah.
murdery and funny and that kind of thing. And that's a sense of humor as well as an interest.
Hey, Mikey, I dropped you a link on Twitter if you want to come in.
So I mean,
Ah, there.
like,
You are here, sorry.
I think it's very difficult for a person not to be themselves. So if someone has an avatar that is not representing themselves, they're showing you a face of themselves that
Hmm.
maybe they keep aside, or maybe it's what they strive to be, or maybe it's you know like a character that they're writing in their head because that feels more comfortable than their own skin.
I
But
think there's a lot of that, of
I
people.
don't think it's not genuine, but at the same time it's not genuine.
Yeah, I
Go on.
think there is a lot of that of people like writing a character, and the character is often kind of an idealized version of what they would want to be.
I think that's called a Mary Sue.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm just
I
saying.
try
I
to
think
be.
I think that is a common thing for people to do.
Hmm.
And I think most people, if they actually try some serious writing, that most of the time the first character that's going to come out is going to be a Mary Sue until they, develop a little more writing skill and how to flesh out other characters better.
Hmm.
Because your personality is really the sum of your life experience. So, in order to know what a character's personality is, you need to develop a lot of background information about where they came from, what their life was like when they were growing up. And that takes some time and it takes a lot of thinking through of, for a character you're creating that you're, you know, presuming you're creating an adult character, somebody who's, say 25 at the time your story is happening, you've got to try and figure out, what's been going on with them. What have they done with their life up to this point of turning 25?
Oh
What
no.
happened to them? What
Oh
was
no.
their environment they were raised in when they were
Sorry.
5 or 6?
My bad.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, Angie.
How y'all doing?
Okay.
All
Good.
right, you sound a bit nervous and out of breath.
I sorry I interrupted, but I forgot to mute the YouTube before I came in, like a noob.
Oh, it happens a lot. I actually had the same thing. We went live, and it took me a minute to realize I needed to mute the YouTube.
Hmm.
It got real quiet.
I hope my throat clears because I keep getting a little croaky here.
Ribbit.
Yeah, well, for me,
Yeah,
it's an
I do know
allergic
one
reaction.
person. Sorry, I do know someone who is exactly the same in real life as they are online. That would be Badger, because he really is like that.
That's great.
Well,
Yeah.
there's only a very few people here in the community that I have met in real life, so I can't speak for very many of them, and most of them I only, met for one day at the Ark Encounter. So Diana's really the only one I've spent any significant time with.
I'm just as
Yeah.
batshit crazy in real life as I am on the internet.
Are you?
Yeah.
Well, you play
I
violent
have
video
no
games,
doubt.
so we expect that.
I truly believe that.
Better to the video games than real life.
You appear to be very genuine to me. I believe that.
I'm legit crazy as fuck.
Hello. Me too. But I'm
Yep.
more of an introvert.
Well,
I
and I think
actually
there's a
talk.
legitimate thing to that on the video games about, again, in a video game, you're kind of playing a character, but it might give you a chance to get out some things that you couldn't do in real life.
Hmm.
What do you mean couldn't do in real life? Like it's and that's not on like a morbid like dangerous kind of thing because it's just I mean these are imaginary guns with imaginary people, so it's more or less
Really?
who's who's really good at controlling their character.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing as if I was doing race cars or anything else.
Well, that's the thing. In a video game, there's no lasting consequences. If you're driving a race car and you will flip out against the wall, you don't actually die.
Right.
I
One thing
don't
that's
know. There
very
are a few games that do build in consequences. Sorry about that. Like Undertale. You if you're killing off characters, that's going to stick with you through the entire game. There's one game that if you die, you actually die, and you have to start the game all over again.
I haven't played the game, but if I understand the premise, there's one character who remembers all your previous attempts.
Yeah, that would be Sans.
Yeah, so things do kind of carry through then that it's not actually hitting the reset button because he's going to remember what you did the last time through and it's going to affect how the game reacts to you.
or there's games like Mass Effect where your decisions in even previous games, like and what you do in Mass Effect 1 is ported over to Mass Effect 2. So all those,
Dragon Age does that too.
yeah, what you did previously affects the story for the rest of the your experience with that title.
Hmm. So, what do you feel makes, if you're writing and creating a character, what do you think makes for a good character? What makes them seem real?
Flaws,
Habits.
yeah, habits.
Yeah, well, but the flaws I think would go along with what we said. We were talking earlier a bit about Mary Sue characters. And I think, yeah, the reason everybody hates those is because they tend to be these flawless characters who can do everything.
Superman's.
Yep. And Superman is exactly the reason I never cared for the DC comics.
Yep. And
It's like if he's truly invulnerable, if he doesn't have to really be afraid of anything, nothing is really a challenge for him.
But he
you
is
know,
afraid.
They have developed him more over the years. But like when I was reading the comics back in the 70s, he really was kind of two dimensional. It was hard to make anything a challenge for him unless somebody had a piece of kryptonite.
and then it was like the whole moving faster than light, damn near. It's like, well, if you have that kind of speed, then why are you punching with this guy? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and maybe that's part of character development that we could talk about. Is just it has to be at least believable, and if it's going to be non-believable or unbelievable, rather, um, it's got to be consistent.
Yeah,
You
you can
can't
have a
you can't
character
do this
do
thing. Yeah,
unbelievable things. You can have a very powerful magical character who can basically perform miracles, but there still have to be some limitations, and you have to be consistent about the limitations.
yeah.
Well, you also have to.
Like he can't fly in episode 2 or book 2 and then fall in a hole later. It's like, wait a minute, he flies. Like what? He should just be floating midair.
Of course, the phone rings. Sorry.
And that's actually one of the things about Superman that people don't realize from the earlier incarnations that in the 60s and early 70s, Superman couldn't fly.
No, he just jumped real good.
Yeah,
Put my picture.
which is, it's basically what Marvel does with the Hulk. He
Right.
can't really fly, but it's like he can jump several hundred yards at a time, so he can cover a lot of ground pretty fast.
And I've always liked Marvel characters more, just because I always wanted to be Wolverine.
I always liked the Marvel characters more because they seemed more complete people, that they weren't just superheroes. They showed scenes of how they had to balance this with dealing with the real life. That, Peter Parker is Spider Man and he's patrolling the city for crime, but at the same time, he's flunking out of school because he's not spending enough time doing his homework.
Right. There's no
And I
web
think,
trick for algebra.
yeah, well, that puts a lot of realism in it, that there's still some limitation there, that he still only has 24 hours in a day, and he has to do all the things a normal person has to do, plus manage to fight crime.
Unless you're Superman, then you can just turn time back by flying
Yeah,
backwards.
yeah, well, time travel always gets into a lot of sticky problems for writers. It's very hard to do properly.
Piers
Because with time
Anthony had a
travel,
good
if you can
spin
always
on it.
just turn. I'm sorry, go Faye.
This is it. Piers Anthony. He had a good spin on a time character. He did the incarnations. Like war, death, time, nature, um, etc., etc. And
Squirrel.
when he did his time character, there was a unique spin on it because we think of time as going in one direction, but he was affecting people opposite. Like he'd meet you as an old lady and he'd leave you when you were a baby. He was going
Squirrel.
backwards.
Look at that squirrel.
So that that impacted the storytelling, the intrigue of the reader, kind of gave it a unique thing because if he met you as an old person, you could tell him things, but he'd have to remember them. He wasn't experiencing your life with you. It was a very fleeting thing. It was interesting, but everything for him when he was using his ability, he was moving backwards. So if he fell in love, eventually you'd have to give that up because that person turned into a child.
Oh,
Wow.
I
Okay.
haven't read that one. What book was that?
Um, it's by Piers Anthony. It's uh I can't even think of the name of it.
I've read some of his other books, but I'm not familiar with the story you're talking about.
Have you read On a Pale Horse?
No.
Um, yeah, it's a very interesting group. It's incarnations of immortality or something like that. Even War is a person, but they all have their different book. And thinking, oh, Bearing an Hourglass. That's it.
Ah,
Bearing an Hourglass by
yeah.
Piers Anthony. At one point, I had to read the book with a mirror because it was reversed. It was
All
very
right.
hard to read in some parts because of that. But I was sitting there with a little makeup mirror reading the book.
Interesting.
Cool.
It was very cool. The details were good. Like there were lots of very good details. A lot of his stories are, I think, excellent for a young mind who is exploring not only their own identity and because he does do a lot of fantasy writing. His Zanth books were, I think, very impactful on me when I was a teenager because it wasn't the typical approach to love. It wasn't a typical approach to problem solving. And everything was a pun. So if you're into dad jokes, go for it.
I love dad jokes.
Yeah, the
Mhm.
Xanth series was my fiance's favorite.
Yeah, it very well written. I think he's a writer from Florida. He's a dad. He has daughters,
Yep.
etc., etc. I don't know if he's still with us, but I do know that he was extremely good at, you know, participating with his fans. If you wrote him, he wrote you back.
Not only did he write you back, but fans often submitted jokes that he would include in the stories.
Yep. In his epilogues, he includes details like that. But I
Yeah,
mean, not everyone is going to write something on that level, and he's very people really don't celebrate him, say, the way they do Tolkien or Stephen King or whatever. Everyone has their unique way of presenting a character, but um, with him, he explained the story and the world at the same time without making you feel like you were being lectured.
Okay.
It was easy to be immersed, and the vocabulary was not dumbed down. So I spent a lot of time redlining things, going, "What does this word mean?"
yeah.
My grandmother's like, "You have a dictionary, use it."
That's what my mom used to tell me. Go look it up. I
Yep,
didn't buy
and
all
I
those
Actually,
did.
yeah.
encyclopedias for nothing.
I remember several times in the Zant series that we had to reference a dictionary because he was using words that neither of us knew.
Hmm.
I had to do that when I was reading Hitchens. And I know a lot of words, and I still had to get the dictionary out. I was like, dang, dude.
Yeah, but in the
So
Zant series,
verbose.
he was very good about, each book, like bringing in a character that was somehow from another region or out of their element. So you
Hmm.
always had that outsider, so there was a reason for people to be explaining things to them that everyone who lived there would know.
Well, not only that, but each character did seem to have a unique ability. And as you followed through, you know, you the other people, even if they had known this person, like Millie the ghost, they got confused with Millie the ghost. She was turned into a ghost. However, her magic ability was sex appeal. Nobody knew.
Yep.
There were things that people had to discover about each other's powers, but the magic part didn't seem to matter as much as the character themselves. Were they a good person or a bad person?
Well, and even about themselves, now I can't remember the character's name, but um, the young man in like the first and second book that,
Bank.
yeah, that he didn't know what his own magical ability was.
Hmm.
That basically the whole book was about him trying to find out what his magic was because they knew he had strong magic, but it was it was a kind of subtle thing. It wasn't an obvious one.
Well, only a few people knew he had strong magic, but they didn't know what it was.
Richard, I think you're echoing. Did you mute YouTube?
He himself did not know what the magic ability was, and he was being exiled.
I feel
Yep.
better now.
Yeah, much
Oh,
better.
I feel better now. I'm not the only one that did that.
No, like I said, I did that too when we started up. So
I
I'm
try to
very
remember not
sorry
to.
to pop in and say hi and leave again, but I have a guest and I need to go. But I will be watching and listening. Yes, my mic listening.
okay, and at,
So,
at 2 o'clock we'll be having Ansgar Odison coming in to talk about race and gender swap.
Yay!
okay. All right.
But
That'll be a
that
good
actually will
conversation.
wind up being a new link when I do that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. It's good to see y'all. Love you
See
guys.
you.
Hi, Angie.
Catch
Bye,
you
Angie.
Bye,
later.
Angie. Catch you
Bye.
later.
There are many ways to balance a character.
Bye.
Bye.
Mhm.
There are many ways to balance a character, but the thing is, it's like if you have someone who's physical, you might want to get them a flaw like being emotionally inept. Or if you have someone who seems to be able to do it all, you might give them a handicap with, say, time management,
Mhm.
or addiction, or a violin playing issue, or you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Or an ethical quirk of some
Okay,
sort. Yeah.
okay,
yeah,
how could you have a violin playing issue? Unless it
I
was
was
like a
being
special interest and you hyper focus on it and you can't get them away to do anything else.
well. Look at Sherlock Holmes.
Hmm.
He
Yeah,
does have
but
a
I wouldn't.
violin playing issue, and he can get into that and not do what he's supposed to be doing. And Watson always had to be like, "Hey, hey, we have a case, we have a case, we have a case. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, put down the drink. Let's go."
Yeah. Well, pretty much anything can become an addiction to the point that the character can be, so focused on it that it interferes with them doing the other things they're supposed to do.
Hmm.
I think if it's not a drug or some mind altering substance like that, it's probably good to start it off as a habit that gradually turns into an addiction.
Yeah. Something they get increasingly
Yeah,
obsessed with.
yeah, because then you get more that you can explore in how the character develops into this and how they change and what they're sacrificing and leaving behind. You can make it more interesting, I think.
Hmm.
Especially if they have a reason to do so.
Oh yeah.
I've read many stories where someone who's developed a character, and this person's in a bad mood, And it's like, well, I'm reading the story and I'm going, why are they in a bad mood? Well, they just are. And it's like, no.
See,
Like,
look
and
at
what when you write a story, you need to decide, who do you want to read the story. Do you want a young adult audience? Do you want an adult audience? And more than that, are you talking to a specific person out there? Are you talking to a group of people? Like, there's all different ways to focus your mind. But I suggest you think of the dumbest person you know who hasn't met any of your friends. Think of your characters as your friends and explain things clearly.
Yes.
so with and I agree with you, and I think the Harry Potter series has the character Snape is a really good example of somebody who's not particularly friendly to the kids, but he's got his reasons for it, and he seems to dislike Harry Potter, but the reason that gets uncovered later in the story is that he was picked on and ridiculed by Harry Potter's father.
And Harry looks
Spoiler
jealous.
alert.
Huh? Oh, come on!
Kind
Well,
of late
that's
I'm
for
really
joking.
revealed in
spoilers.
book
I'm
three.
joking. I'm
That's
joking.
revealed in book three, so it's not really that big of a
Yeah.
deal.
Well,
And it's
and
from 15 years
also,
ago.
yeah, anything that has come out more than like 3 years ago, I don't think spoilers matter anymore
Harry
because either
Potter's a
people haven't,
wizard.
yeah, either
Spoiler
people have
alert.
seen the
No.
movie or they're not going to bother.
Yeah, and I think contrastingly, that the Harry Potter series is definitely more suitable for the younger audiences. It seems to work out better for them, whereas Lord of the Rings is probably for a slightly older audience, and there's a lot of similar themes in those two stories, but they're quite different as well. One thing I
Well,
really
Yeah.
like, one thing I really liked about the Harry Potter series is that because we read it to our kids, so and we enjoyed it too, my wife and I. It was very well written. We thought that these characters, unlike a lot of other stories, the characters remain relatively consistent all the way through the whole story. So Snape is always a little bitter and a little bit difficult for the kids to deal with right up to the very end, and doesn't suddenly have an epiphany and change like the happily ever after syndrome that you see with a lot of stories. And I find the characters are much better quality that way. They seem more real.
See, the
I'm
thing about Harry Potter and a lot of the reason why it's so popular is that a majority of its base grew up at the same rate as the characters were, because she was trying to put them out once every couple of years.
Yeah, well, for like the first five, she was putting out a book a year, so they were going right along with the audience base. That the characters were aging at the same rate.
They had some terrible, terrible problems to deal with that kids shouldn't deal with. But hey, that's the nature of stories.
Yeah, but at the same time, they were also dealing with problems that they could relate to. Typical things that teenagers went through in puberty and that.
I remember when I was in high school and we had to fight a basilisk. Let me tell you, it was exactly like in Harry
Well, what high school did you go to?
Potter.
Are you kidding? A basilisk was my first pet.
Well, I had to deal with a dragon, but
Right,
at,
right.
at least I didn't go in with all the prejudice that most people do, that thinking I had to fight the thing. So, I just start out talking to it, and it's like,
Who's your homeroom teacher?
Mind you, that was probably easier for you because you're a dinosaur.
Right.
well, you can boil it down further. You can look at it as dealing with a difficult teacher. You can look
yeah,
at it as dealing with a bully in school, someone who just doesn't like you for no reason, even though
Breathe
Harry
fire.
did kind of ask for it because, will you be my friend? No. Okay then. We're enemies. Sure. A bunch of things. It's Harry always had most difficulty when he didn't go to an adult. And then by the time he is willing to go to an adult, nobody's willing to listen to him because he's been a sneaky pants. Like there are different themes. It's like I remember reading this with a friend of mine, and they're like, "Why isn't he telling somebody? Why is it?" It's like think of his background, the Dursleys. Is he going to trust adults? And you can see him shift, and you can see him grow, but you also can see him being a bit, eh, I don't know.
Well, that was part of Harry Potter that I could really identify with. Was with his situation with the Dursleys and that of kind of growing up not trusting adults
Hmm.
and kind of feeling he had to do everything on his own because he couldn't expect any help from the people he lived with.
And he also learned that he had to do everything on his own, and that kind of shadowed his friend's opinion with the whole "you've got a hero complex, huh? Me?"
Hmm.
And dealing with, "Oh, my friends have a different way of looking at me than I do." And I'm sure teenagers go through all those things. There's a lot of different things in there that kids do experience, except for instead of just finding out, like, instead of gum in the back of your hair, it's somebody picking on you, somebody may have hexed your broom, someone. And it's like, huh. So yeah, it's
I like that
fun.
there's a lot of problem solving in that story too, and they figure things out, and it's not always them figuring out; it's other people who give them tips, and it's more realistic this way. I'm not saying that the story should be realistic, but it's nice when there's aspects of the stories that are not inconsistent with reality.
Right. Well, there is a Harry Potter rip off out there.
Just
It's
one.
called. Well,
Larry
no,
Snotter.
it
Well, there's one
actually
that's not porn.
it
Sweet.
actually
Wow.
took took exact lines out of Harry Potter
Oh.
and direct concepts. But it is called Wondersmith: The Calling of Morrigan Crow, but Wondersmith is spelled with a U, and it's by Jessica Townsend, and I think she's in Australia. And there was enough uh, pirated material where people said, "Hey, that's a Harry Potter line. We remember."
Hi,
But
my name's Harry Potter. That's how the book started. It was like, no, wait a minute.
no, it's about a little girl this time, except for what I can tell you is the quote unquote magic school. You don't get it in book one, but it seems like the magic school is only Slytherin.
Hmm.
I'd be interested to get people's opinion on it, but it's really hard to get people to read young adult books.
You know, within the Harry Potter universe, I could actually see that if there was a branch of the school in Australia, that it might only have one house.
Okay, I suck at remembering names, so if you could like send that to me over Twitter, I can look it up.
Sure.
Yeah, just drop it into one of our Twitter groups there.
Okay.
The writers group would probably be best.
I don't know if Orla's in that one.
That can be easily fixed. I'll make sure she is.
Oh, I'm sorry. The first one's called Nevermore. Oh,
Yeah, and I know I've seen those books. I haven't actually read them.
okay. Let me.
And one
Yeah,
thing I just go
I
ahead.
like to read the books my daughter reads first.
Uh huh.
Yeah, reading's
Um,
a bit difficult for me. I think I really need to get a subscription to Audible and get back into the audiobooks. I used to do that years ago, and
Orla, I just added you to the writers group, so if you go in Twitter messages, you'll see it there.
Thank you.
I put both of your accounts in. I'm not sure which one you don't want. You can always leave with the one you don't want.
Thanks.
No, but what do you call it? You know, when I was in college, they took a lot of classes, and one of the things it's almost like music. You can't just listen to the same tone the entire time you're reading. And when it comes to writing, well, we told stories before we wrote. It was an oral tradition. That's why it was poetry, like the epic poetry, and
Yeah,
people would sort of like sing it out sometimes, and that's why they were called bards. And in some cultures, storytellers were so reviled that, or you know, worshipped, that they could basically get a lot of favors, get a lot of food, get a lot of everything because entertainment matters. Still
yeah.
does, except for now, I think we have a different idea of what entertainment is for everyone.
Well, until very recent times, 99% of the population was illiterate. So before people had better education and before we had modern technology, storytelling was really the only form of entertainment.
My town is 55% illiterate, and I don't know how much illiterate.
So well, just especially with nomadic societies, that
Hmm.
a storyteller, would have been a highly revered member of the group because it's like, okay, after it gets dark and you can't do the hunting or anything anymore, you're sitting around the campfire at night, there's nothing else to do. So somebody who can tell an interesting story, was going to be the center of attention.
Mm. Hmm.
And
Agreed.
a lot of times, especially again with nomadic societies, if they're moving around, they can't carry very much with them. So even if they had a language, they can't really have a library traveling with them. So it's got to be somebody who can keep it all in their head.
Not only that, but books were incredibly expensive. The written word, when things were being written down, it was an incredibly expensive process.
Well, yeah, before the printing press, it was very laborious. Everything had to be hand copied and taking many hours, and there was only a very few people who had the capability of doing that.
Hmm. And a lot of the times, the people who were copying didn't understand a word of what they were copying.
Yes, that's actually true that a lot of the copyists were functionally illiterate,
Hmm.
that they could copy the shape of the letters, but they really could not read the words.
Hmm. But that reality varies culture to culture.
Yeah, no, in that example, I was thinking particularly a lot of the church scribes in Europe through the Middle Ages.
Hmm.
I enjoyed Christopher Hitchens' observation about why didn't the God of Christianity go to the Chinese who were already literate and get them to share that message instead of illiterate people in the desert. I'm
He's got a
paraphrasing.
point.
Yeah, it was very good point.
I
Yes.
hadn't heard that one before, but when you mention it, yeah, it would have made a lot more sense
Yeah.
that they already had the infrastructure set up to produce and distribute books.
Oh, yeah. They had literacy for over 6,500 years, from what I've been able to discern. So, and that comes from looking into traditional Chinese medicine before and trying to understand it. It's quite an interesting system, but I think that where it's lacking big time is double blind studies, and that's where I think that's why I don't consider it to be all that credible yet. So more work needs to be done.
Well, the Chinese had a lot of inventions long before Europe, and it's
Oh
like
yeah.
people from Europe discovered these things and just used them in different ways.
Including a little toy helicopter.
Oh really?
They called
Hmm.
it the Dragonfly.
Yep.
You know,
Well,
You
their
should
video.
look that up. Ancient Chinese dragonfly toy.
You know, their video surveillance system that they have. They call it in the Chinese characters translate to Skynet, which a lot of people will recognize from the Terminator movies. But apparently, this has been around a lot longer than those movies.
yeah,
Mm. I mean, it was a very simple thing, but I mean, come on.
yeah. Well, one of the big ones the Chinese had was they invented gunpowder,
Yeah.
but they did not use it for war. For them, it was a ceremonial thing. They used rockets for celebrations.
Hmm.
It was the Europeans who got the idea that, hey, you can stuff this stuff down a big tube and put a ball in front of it, and it's going to send that ball to do some damage.
Yeah. You know, it says a lot about society what they choose to use their inventions for.
I put a link to um, a website about helicopters. But
Oh, great.
actually, a lot of the early thinkers, blah 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 blah, artists and whatever. I know Leonardo da Vinci wanted to be an inventor
Oh, yeah.
rather than an artist, and what
Mhm.
he wanted to sell to was war machines, and apparently selling torture devices, war machines, things like that. I mean, there was one that was a great big metal cow, and they would put the victim in it and heat it up.
Yeah, it had a couple of
And
holes in the front so people could hear them making noise but not understand what they're yelling.
yeah,
And
the
they'd sit
thing
around and
is,
have parties while this was.
the
Yeah.
inventor of that was so morbid and gleeful when he was explaining it to the leader of the nation, blah blah blah, or tribe or whatever, um, that he disgusted the man. So he was the first victim.
Oh, yeah, he's more sadistic than the. Wow.
Yeah, he was just
Yeah.
he just came off as so repulsive and creepy that he got to be the first.
I'm so glad we have human rights these days. They just need to be implemented more ubiquitously.
I agree.
Kind of stuff just our history is horrible. You know,
Yeah,
all over
me
the world,
too.
not just a few places, but it's all over the world.
Because they really do tend to ignore quite a lot of them, especially when it comes to healthcare in America.
To what?
I can't remember to healthcare in America. I can't. I
Oh,
can
health.
never remember if it's 25 or 26 that it says everyone has the right to access affordable healthcare, and the USA is signed up to the
United Nations Declaration of Human Rights.
that's the one.
Yep.
They certainly don't seem to care about it.
Well, countries sign on to it, but I find a lot of them will be selective about which parts they'll implement, and because there are local laws that can often conflict. And then you've got countries like Saudi Arabia and other such oppressive regimes that refuse to sign it, and then they will sign up for something instead called the Cairo Accord, which is just pro Sharia law, which is not human rights at all. It's quite the opposite. Highly oppressive. And then I've lost respect for the United Nations because they allowed they put Saudi Arabia in as the chair of the Human Rights Commission for at least 2 years, and I consider that disgusting. And the minimum requirement for any participant in that Human Rights Commission, I think, very reasonably should be a signatory on the Human Rights Declaration, and they are not, and yet they got to chair it, which I think is just a travesty of justice, to put it mildly.
Yeah. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense because obviously the policies they implement as a government are in violation of so much of what that's supposed to be promoting.
Oh yeah, they in their laws they, and I think it was the Dawkins Foundation that reported on this originally. At least that's the first one I came across years ago. They Saudi Arabia makes it illegal to be an atheist in Saudi Arabia.
Yep.
You if you don't believe in a deity in Saudi Arabia, then they classify you as a terrorist, and I think you get 1,000 lashes and I don't know how many years in prison for that. And
Yeah,
yeah,
but
Okay,
does it have to be Allah, or can I just believe in anything I want to? Because then you have his noodly goodness.
yeah, I think in Saudi Arabia, I suspect it's probably you have to do Allah. I know in
okay.
like Indonesia, you had to pick from one of 5 religions, and if you don't choose one, then you go to prison for double the amount of time it takes you to decide.
Okay, I'd like to keep this conversation more on topic. I don't want to get off into politics here.
Oh, my apologies.
No, it's okay. Slight diversion, but
So
let's
the
get back to the story.
so the what one more last thing. So the torture device. How bad was this guy's sale pitch? Where he's like, "Oh, it does what? Yeah, how does it work? Yeah, go ahead and climb in there. Yeah, just go ahead and get right in there and let me just close the door.
Yeah.
Okay, start the fire. This guy is crazy. This guy is crazy, crazy. We can't even. No, yes, it was a good idea. I know you can still hear me in there, but yeah, we got to get rid of this guy. His idea was so crazy that they had to kill him.
Yeah, see, that's actually an interesting story.
You know what I'm saying? Like that's
Yeah.
where my brain took it immediately. Is like whoever heard him, whatever king that was, he listened to his pitch and was just like, "Oh, this guy's psycho."
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
kill him.
the king was like, okay, it's okay if we use this thing, but we really shouldn't enjoy it that much.
Yeah, why are you salivating? This is creeping me out. All right, get him in there.
He's an extreme sadist, extreme
Yeah.
sadist.
Crazy. Reminds me of homeboy from Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones.
Oh boy, yeah, Joffrey.
Joffrey was just an idiot kid, the older one.
There's another one, yeah, and he tortured that
Ramsay.
Goldjoy or whatever his name was.
Theon Greyjoy.
Greyjoy, that's it. Yeah, he tortured him. Oh, they got really brutal in that show. Wow.
It took a
I
dark
stopped watching after the 5th series because it started to make up its own shit because they didn't have any more source material to go from.
I think that's
And
okay.
then it got really bad.
I think it's, and maybe there's a storytelling element to be chatted about on this. People got so upset that they stopped following the books, but I think I want it to be different than the books. Like Lord of the Rings is different than the books. Harry Potter is different than the books. Like all these things are different. Like I think that's a good thing.
Yeah,
And
they
one of
are
Harry Potter
different, but they
movies were
don't
pretty
deviate
consistent.
so much from
Where
the
they-
main story.
The Harry Potter movie was actually pretty close to the books compared to how other movies go. I find like they added those little heads in the bus that weren't in the book, but most of it was right on course with it, and I think that's
No.
because the author was involved with the movies.
Yeah, the Harry Potter movies, I could accept that they weren't exactly like the books,
But they were
a lot of it was more like telling the same story from someone else's viewpoint.
sure,
You
but
know,
they
so
stayed mostly on course with it. They didn't go really.
No.
yeah.
That was pretty good. Lord
Well,
of the Rings.
I
That-
have to qualify that I have not seen all of the Harry Potter movies. I only saw like through the 5th one.
They start to get really dark, the later ones. The Lord of the Rings series, I think they should have made 6 movies. They could have made more profit that way, and it would have been much more enjoyable for all us fans.
there were some long films.
But
And
the
I
first
am already way
first-
too happy to spend the whole day watching Lord of the Rings.
there we
I
go.
have noticed that in a lot of movies or other versions of a good book. I mean, I can understand they can't use every scene, but when they change the flavor of the story, like Airbender was a charming anime or a charming
Yeah.
cartoon, etc., etc. The movie, obviously, no one, including the actors, including the director, etc., etc., nobody watched it. They had no idea. They didn't say any of the names right. The characters had the wrong moods, the wrong this. I mean,
Yeah.
sure they could have added a different thing, or but if the tone and the mood is not there,
Yeah,
it's
I did
not the
not see
same
the movie.
story.
It's
Well,
bad.
the first strike for me is just that there had been so many bad attempts at making animated things into live action that I was very
Dragon
skeptical of
Ball,
any of those to begin
No,
with.
Death Note.
It's true. All the live action animes are awful.
Yeah.
Just
I think
it's not even worth trying to watch them.
yeah, I don't think that. I think everyone should, from now on, understand that's just a bad idea. Just don't do it. You're not going to be able to nail it. No one has nailed it. And honestly, the anime, like if someone tried to make a live action Spirited Away, I will be in the streets with a pitchfork.
You and me both. You
It is one of the
and
most
me both.
beautiful
Or
things
Kiki's
I've ever
delivery
seen.
service.
Yeah,
You
there will be blood in the streets. There will be torches. There will be all of it should just be left for what it is.
I don't
Yes.
normally watch those kinds of shows, but I'm familiar with all of these shows you're mentioning: the Airbender, Kiki's Delivery Service, and some others.
Yeah.
Totoro's another one, because our kids bring it to us, so we watch with them. It's they're actually quite good. The Airbender one we found to be quite enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, Randolph, I'm the same way. That most of my information's kind of outdated because I only know the anime from when I was watching it raising kids, and that was all
Yeah.
15, 20 years ago now.
Our kids have pretty diverse tastes, though. Like the youngest, she started watching Game of Thrones with us at age 7, and she liked all of it except for the intimate scenes. Then she'd go out of the room, but that's normal for little kids. But all the rest of it, she didn't have a problem watching. So and people said, "What? How can you let your kids watch that? That's not for kids." Well, if the kids are ready to watch, they're ready to watch. It's the way it goes, right?
Now
Yeah,
that's an interesting comment because does that say something, that's already kind of internal to kids that they're not having a problem with the violence, but when it gets to the intimate part, they don't want to see it?
See, kids can take a lot more than people assume they can. They can understand a lot more than people can assume that they
Oh,
can.
definitely.
So I am content with my kids watching most things. I mean, I do like to preview them, and I will still make a judgment. But if they feel that they're ready on their own to watch this sort of stuff, I will probably let them, unless it's like really gratuitous or sexual in nature. I just won't allow like most things that are
Kids aren't
sexual.
interested in watching that stuff anyway, so
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
when you think about it, most of the fairy tales out there were very violent, very dealt with death, dealt with really difficult things that might sort of leak over into a child's life. You know what I mean? Like
Well,
mom died, or
I mean,
brothers were sick, or that type of thing. And I think these sort of things, or like she danced in burning hot shoes until she died.
well, I think
exactly.
most of the fairy tales, especially if you're looking at like the Grimm stuff,
yeah, I was just thinking of
most of these were like cautionary tales that basically they all boil down to if you wander into the woods alone, you're going to die.
Well, actually, it's a little bit more complicated than that. If you look at the red shoes is actually a moral tale.
Yeah.
It's
No,
like a
I know that's
morality
greatly
play.
oversimplified, but yeah.
Like Othello is a morality play. A morality plays are things that churches used to do. It was like, if you don't listen to the adults in your life, you're going to die. Again and again. If you are greedy, if you are vain, if you were this, it could lead you to a path of destruction. You will die. And it was just a way of molding children.
Yep. Well, and that's a lot of the good storytellers do that into modern times. And one of the things with the original Star Trek was that
Great series. Yeah.
yeah,
That and The Next Generation, two of my favorites. Yeah.
yeah,
And I like the Orville a lot too.
Yeah, well, in the original, Nicole Nichols actually went into Gene Roddenberry's office one day, after reading like the script, like the scripts for the first 5 episodes. And she went into his office and challenged him, and she says, "I know what you're doing here. These are morality plays." And he was like, "Don't tell anyone else. Don't let the rest of the cast know that this is what we're trying to do."
Now, on CBC Radio, our national radio station here in Canada, last week they were talking about Star Trek and how, because DC, and I forgot the last name, but that's the writer, she used the initial D because if she put Dorothy, I think was her first name, she wouldn't, she finds she didn't get so many jobs. But what they found when they were presenting Star Trek to these different television stations across North America is the ones down south. There were a couple that were very strongly religious kind of communities, and they refused to play it because because they didn't like some of the secular themes that were in there. So Gene Roddenberry apparently said, or whatever. Oh, what it was is they didn't like that Uhura was black and that she's got a very nice role in the show. And so they objected to that. So he
She's
said,
not a
well, too
maid.
bad, then don't play it. That's fine with me. I don't care. And then after it became started to become very popular, those radio stations, or those TV stations came and said, okay, we'll play it.
If you've noticed, the stories that stick with the culture are not the ones where someone is just going through their life. The stories that stick with a culture are the stories that people tell from the heart, whether it's a fantasy role or if it's sci-fi, or if no matter how they present it, if they are dealing with like the zeitgeist of the time,
Mm-hmm.
like the trials and tribulations, even if they pose it in a medieval setting,
Yeah.
if it affects the culture, if it makes people think, if they can see their own reflections in it, that story will live on. That's why, um, well, I don't do it anymore as much, but that's why I keep calling for more sort of like secular stories where
Hmm.
people aren't invoking gods,
Yeah.
because there's too much of that. If you look at the Polar Express, has
What a
anyone
boring
heard
show
that?
that was.
Do,
Oh, wow.
do you, does it not reek of Christianity?
Well, my wife and I, we started watching the movie, and we didn't get through it. We just found it such a
Watch
drag,
it.
such a
No,
boring thing.
watch it. It is basically it
Torture.
is no, it is evangelical. It is basically get your butts to church. In this story though, Jesus is very much Santa. Even the Holy Ghost is in that story.
I thought they were brothers.
That's
Oh, you didn't. No, you didn't.
How can
Jesus and
that be,
Santa.
Mikey? I thought Santa was an elf.
I thought Jesus and Santa were brothers.
So
Wait,
how
wait,
can
who is
Actually,
it who said the other day that the reason that Santa can travel the world overnight is because of all the pieces of Saint Nick is
that
all
was
over
me.
the yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
that sounds
There were
interesting.
two graves that were unearthed eventually, and they thought it was one grave, but it's actually two people who were Saint Nicholas, and you know how the Roman Catholics love their relics. Well, there's bits and pieces of those corpses all over the world.
yeah,
Tongues, fingers, you name it, it's there. I don't know if they like passed out any dick, but who knows?
Well, they probably love it like they love children.
yeah. That's one of the strangest things about the
Inappropriate.
Catholic Church that I don't get.
Well,
Is
that's why
having small
Santa can
bits
go
of the
around the
body in
earth.
churches all around the world.
Well, Santa is already all around the world.
Yeah, and
Santa is.
that's proven by the NORAD, North American Defense Network. I don't know if you've ever seen NORADSanta.org, but
Yep.
they track Santa every year.
Well, I think it's kind of sick. Well,
Yeah.
but like, okay, if you're going to write a story, any story, I think it's not just the characterizations, it's the plot, it's the topics. It's giving your characters the ability to breathe.
Yeah. Well, and I think the reason that science fiction and fantasy are so popular is because it does give people that ability to, present a problem they see in society and say that, oh, we're not talking about you, but if they make it so people see the reflection of their own society, they can point out problems.
But
That's a
mommy,
hallmark
what?
of science fiction. But
But
Wonder Lady, I wonder if you could maybe provide some kind of an example of a character being able to breathe. I find that point very interesting, if you don't mind.
Okay. Um uh, let's see. Harry Potter. Nervous habits, like pushing his glasses up on his nose.
Okay.
Things like that. Something a person actually does. It might seem like wasted typing to have that, or a character who wrings their hands when they lie,
So their
but
mannerism.
not yes, a mannerism, a
That
thing.
defining their character in more detail that way.
Right, but it also like their viewpoint. If this person was an abused orphan, you don't have them going, well, adults are great. Yeah, adults are wonderful. Like I can't wait to go. Oh, I have a secret. I'm gonna go and tell an adult. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and that's what I was pointing at, that, if you're trying to bring in a character, who's 25 when the story starts, that you have to think about what experiences they had when they were 5 and 10 years old to figure out who they are at 25.
Right. But at the same time, what if your character wakes up from a coma, has no memory, wakes up at 25, and you have to bring them into a whole new thing, whole new world? Say they slipped and they fell and they hit their head and their brain is gone and they have no thoughts, and one day they wake up again and there's technology and all kinds of things. Like, even if they didn't have memory loss, would they recognize the world they live in? So okay,
In the
so it's
Marvel
not.
comics from the late 1970s, they had a fantastic example of that.
Uh-huh. But you could also have an example of that when Shawshank Redemption, when someone gets out of prison who has been in prison for so long and they're finally out and the world is so different.
Yeah.
I think what the character did in that story was he took his own life because he didn't know how to function.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's an excellent example. That the world was so different from what he was expecting to have when he came out.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we can. There are so many ways that we can start a character over fresh. Awakenings was actually an actual disease. These people woke up, they had their time, and then they slowly went back to the way they were because the drug didn't do enough.
There's an old TV show called Columbo, and that detective would often
I love him.
back and say, one more thing.
One more thing. One more thing.
Mm-hmm. And that's an example of a character who actually breathes.
There you go. Yeah.
Because that actor was so good at portraying him, but the writing was solid.
John Columbo.
Yeah.
Yeah, he came across as a dummy, and he trapped all these smart people. It was great.
Well, that's the thing.
I think that's actually a psychological. Oh, hi, Kitty.
Yeah.
There's a name for it in therapy. I think it's called like something wonderment or something like that. It's a way of talking people through things. Is, oh wow, you're saying that this and this is this. Well, how does that go with that? Like, you just keep asking those questions. Like, oh, you're saying, oh, I am at a loss. So
and one more thing.
Right. So his like, you kind
sometimes
of,
he does it twice.
What? Yeah.
Mhm.
The fifth one more thing, then just like, all right, guy, you clearly don't know anything, and he's
Yeah, and these smart people underestimate him, right? So it's
Mhm.
you almost feel sorry for the criminal in that show because they get nailed so strongly.
I always feel sad for the criminal. Everyone's everyone's the hero of their own story.
That's a good one.
Well, I mean,
That's
Now,
actually a theme I'm working with a lot with what I'm writing. Is that good and evil are not clear cut concepts.
no, they're not.
So, you know, I have like different groups that are each working at their own objective, and that's what brings them into conflict. It's not like they're really out to destroy each other, but they keep getting in each other's way because they've got a different way of accomplishing basically the same thing.
well, not all the time, but then I find a lot of the time that the villains are written better than the heroes are, which is why they get a fan base.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Black Panther.
Hi, Maya.
yeah,
Joe Dillinger.
Black Panther and Killmonger. That was, I mean, it wasn't accurate to the comics, but in that 90 minutes, everybody was rooting for Killmonger. Then like, wait a minute, this is the Black Panther movie. Wait a minute, where's T'Challa? Like, am I supposed to be rooting for him? Like, I don't know what I believe now.
Well,
Mhm.
look at how Harley Quinn has exploded from basically just being a henchman for the Joker to, being a full character in her own right.
I
I
think the
don't like
cartoons had a
Harley.
lot to do with that.
Yeah, the '90s Batman cartoon was, for me, it's like the holy book of all things DC. It is just my favorite thing, and I will watch that today
Do
all
you
day.
remember the song she sang?
Um, no.
I was like, I never knew that our romance had ended
Oh yeah.
until you poisoned my food. And it, but the thing is, that song I think is as old as like the 1940s,
Hey,
Right.
Pirate Kitty.
and it fit
Hello.
into that relationship perfectly. If
I
you
was
look up the lyrics to that song, "Say We're Sweethearts Again," it fits the Harley and the Joker perfectly. But yet the song is from an old black and white film.
It wouldn't surprise me if they knew all about that, and you know what I'm saying, and just kind of said, "Hey, this would make a great Joker romance thing."
Yeah,
You guys hear me? Oh, there we go.
well, there's
Hi.
some villains that are
Hello.
written in such a way that, you can see they had heroic potential. They have a lot of redeeming qualities.
Yeah.
I jumped in because you guys brought up Harley Quinn and and you guys do realize she was made for the animated series, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Somebody
And
said,
you do know that she was made for the voice actress herself
"Yep, yep."
because the writer loved her voice and wanted her to voice Harley.
It's just like you guys just says. I think the '90s show had a lot to do with that. I'm like, the '90s show had everything to do with that.
Well, to me, the only Joker will be Mark Hamill.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I don't care.
Kevin Conroy is Batman, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, exactly.
Like the '90s animated series is like the best Batman in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. I
And
agree.
we can fight if anybody disagrees. No, I'm just kidding.
I actually, I never really followed any of the
Oh
DC
no.
heroes,
You know,
so
this
I
is going to
haven't
sound
seen any of those
blasphemous.
series.
This is going to sound blasphemous, but I found the original series corny when I was a kid. I just was bored to tears by it.
My boyfriend just walked
It
up
was
and tapped
supposed
me
to
on the
be.
shoulder and started making the fighting fists movement and said, "Come on, let's go," because apparently he doesn't agree that the '90s animated series Batman is the best Batman.
It's okay. People are entitled to be wrong.
Okay, well, Kitty, I'm
Yeah.
I'm sorry your relationship is over. Do you need a new place to live?
They said, "I'm sorry your relationship is over. Do you need a new place to live?"
Kitty, I suggest a freezer and a wood chipper.
Hey,
No.
that's
You
my
gotta get the
job. That
lie.
is my job.
I was going to say, that sounded like it was Orla's thing.
Orla and I have some things in common.
So I have this big cow here. It's made out of steel. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna get him into it like a small fire.
I don't know if Pirate Kitty was around when we explained about the cow.
That's why it's so perfect.
The what?
The metal cow.
It was a
What?
medieval torture device that someone invented.
Actually, I think it
Mikey,
was
are
more
you
like,
salivating right now?
I think it might have been like ancient Rome or ancient Greece.
That's why my
Okay.
camera's off.
I think you're right. He was saying it was an ancient Roman thing. I'm messing that up. But yeah, basically it was just a metal shell they would put somebody inside of and start a fire underneath it.
A brazen bull. I've heard of that before.
That's
Oh,
what it's
good,
called.
good.
I was trying to look it up. Since we were talking about like Superman and his brokenness, I think the anti-Superman is like Dr. Manhattan, who is damn near a deity, but is still such a relatable character from The Watchmen.
Yeah. I would agree that I would actually classify him as being a demigod.
Yeah.
But he seems always kind of depressed and remorseful because he is too aware of everything.
Yeah.
Well, I had a very interesting experience watching one of the cartoons. I don't know which one, but basically everyone had been calling Superman the Boy Scout. It was one of the Justice League things.
Oh yeah.
And then Captain Marvel came by. And he was more Boy Scouty than Superman. Superman got his tights in a wad. And then he found out that Marvel was a little boy. An actual innocent. He was out Boy Scouted by an actual Boy Scout. But yeah, Superman has an ugly amount of pride.
I think Christopher Reeves really acted the role well, and it's a shame that he had that accident and couldn't continue making more of the movies, because Superman was such an awesome hero, such an awesome superhero in its time, and I was kind of surprised when I heard that there's some kind of fight between Batman and Superman, and that Batman won or something.
Yeah, Batman won, and he also took Lois out on a date.
Sorry?
He took Lois out
Batman
on a date.
Batman doesn't trust anyone. He made plans to off everybody.
Yeah, he decided he basically kicked himself out of the Justice League because he's like, yeah, you can use all my equipment and do the club thing, but his plans to off everyone was stolen because if everyone went rogue, he had a way of killing everyone off, and it almost worked.
It's a practical thing. I mean, you're dealing with near godlike characters for the most part. Mm-hmm. You have to have a contingency plan. And the way they spin it about being you don't trust us is like,
no, he doesn't trust anyone.
Well, I mean, but that's not even about trust, because there's mind control, which is that they're not wanting to do it on their own. There's about a bajillion ways that they can be forced to do things that isn't about them choosing it.
Even Poison Ivy managed to take over Superman at one point, so I kind of agree with Batman.
Bruce Wayne doesn't even have hubris. And that's a very interesting way of looking at his character.
And there is an exact parallel for that in the Marvel universe.
Mm-hmm.
That Tony Stark has like 50 different suits of Iron Man armor. And he has a specific suit designed for fighting each one of the other Avengers.
Nice.
But do they know that?
It came out.
I know that Hulk is aware of it.
It came out in one of the animated shows.
And did they flip their shit about it?
Well, Bruce Banner basically told him that he needed to destroy all of those except the one to fight the Hulk.
Well, that's weird.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to go. I'll talk to you all later. Thanks very much.
I think that's
Bye-bye.
I think the Hulk, Bruce Banner, shows a little bit of hubris on his own, thinking that he would be the one that they would have to be,
The most worried
fighting
about.
for.
Yeah,
Mm.
well, Bruce Banner is always worried about the Hulk going completely out of control.
Right, but he also has the hubris thinking that he could take his friends out. Think about it. If you don't need
Yeah.
another contingency plan because you're there, really? Huh?
That's fair.
Yeah, but
I
come on,
hadn't
be
thought
honest.
about it
They
in those
always
terms, but
win.
yeah. Yeah, because really Thor is the only one who can stand up to the Hulk, and expect to actually have any staying power.
I mean, look at that chiseled jawline.
I prefer the Beast from X-Men. Thank you very much.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm not into hairy guys.
Hey,
I'm just thinking of the fetish art I've seen over a piece now.
Go on DeviantArt, type in any superhero name.
Well, have you guys, speaking on Marvel and stuff, have you seen the clip where there's a clip from one of these Justice League movies where they're having a meeting about whether Captain, what is his name? Shazam. They called him in the. I
yeah,
can't remember.
his name is
Um,
Shazam.
Shazam. Okay, they're having a meeting about whether Shazam should stay a member, considering that he's only like what 12, whatever. And Wonder Woman goes in on Batman because he knew that he was 12. And well, at the time, I mean, before it, have you guys seen that clip?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I saw that in a cartoon. But go on.
Yeah. No, that's where it is. It's in one of the cartoons, and basically, she's like, "Are you trying to turn him into your next Robin? You have this habit of corrupting children." And he's basically goes into this whole spiel about it's like with whichever Robin it was, I can't remember. The trapeze one, I can't remember.
Dick Grayson.
Was that Dick? I thought that was somebody else. But
No, that's Dick Grayson.
I'm always bad with the Robin names. Um, she brings him up, and and Batman's like, I did that to him so he wouldn't become me.
Are you kidding? Dick Grayson probably would have not ended up like Batman. He would have ended up like the Joker.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to be fair, the Batman and the Joker are fairly similar, except for the humor.
Well, the Batman and the Joker are basically, how do I put this? One cannot exist without the other.
Mm.
And they are mirror images but opposites.
Although the character is
They're
rather
a paradox.
overused. Sorry.
They're a paradox.
Yeah.
It's almost like a world balancer for that particular world. If anything happened to the Joker, there would be no need for Batman.
Well, that's not true. He does have a lot of other villains that he can combat that don't see nearly enough use. And the Joker is being so overused at this point that it's got to a point where he's becoming almost a trope, irrelevant to any further character development because he's used all the fucking time.
I don't watch the movies because I like my heroes and villains animated. So I
Yeah.
can't really give feedback on that part. However, I have read a lot of comic books, and there are more character studies on the Joker than on Batman. Because the Joker, I think, was the first one who broke the fourth wall. He knows he is a character, and he will address the audience. His super villain power is supposedly nothing like Batman. However, his power is super sanity. He is so sane that he's crazy. He
But I mean,
he's
I
hyperbole itself.
Yeah, I don't actually, I don't follow much of the DC stuff, but I think it would be interesting for them to use the Joker going up against some other heroes
They
without
have.
Batman around.
They have, and they have always had to call in Batman because the Joker almost totally fucked over Superman. Yeah, he's wicked.
but I mean, I kind of do agree with Orla in the cinematic sense. Like with all the movies that they're making, every single movie has been Joker, 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 Joker. It's like they're except for the one with like Bane and um well, they've all touched on the other characters, but Joker's always been like the main character, the main bad guy, and it's like,
Yep.
oh yeah, I get that, but like, how many Batman movies have there been, and how many of them have Joker been the main bad guy? It's like, just he's got other villains.
Yeah, I can only think of 2 Batman movies that the Joker wasn't in. And in each of those, then it wasn't Batman fighting just one villain, it was 2 or 3 villains teaming up.
Mm-hmm.
Batman Begins.
You know what you should watch? I know it sounds ridiculous, but Ninja Batman was actually a pretty good sort of cartoon for the series.
It was. And I think they should actually, and I might even go to the movies if they did it, do Batman and Clayface.
Like, there's so many.
Because Clayface isn't all black, is he? There's like a grey area to work with for character development in the movies. So yeah, Clayface in the movie.
If they wanted to put Clayface in the movie, you know what they could do is they could turn the story arc where Clayface makes a daughter into a
They did
movie.
that in a cartoon.
Yeah, no, I know. That's why I know of the idea. Is the cartoon had a story arc but that was more of a Robin focused story arc than Batman, I think.
Yeah, it was, but it was still one of those ones that sort of
the kick in the gut.
This is a cartoon. I just got eviscerated. It hurt.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be muted for a minute because I have to put a kid to bed.
Okay.
But then there's also the whole thing with Ace that happened. Yep. The black and white girl with the costume.
Mm-hmm. I'm also a big fan of Batman Beyond.
I was about to say, I'd watch a Batman Beyond movie.
Yeah, that would be really good. Terry, all the way. Mm-hmm. I love him.
I haven't actually seen Batman Beyond.
Oh.
Much. I've seen a couple of episodes. I think the only episode that I really remember is the one where they were doing that thing called splicing, I think, was what it was. I remember that episode, but other ones I don't know. But I heard that they brought back the Joker into that series.
They did.
That was a runoff from the comic book where they kidnapped Robin and tortured him.
Yeah, Tim Drake. That Robin was Tim Drake, not Dick Grayson.
Yeah.
He was Nightwing at that point.
Yep, he was Nightwing at that point. Very good. I'm impressed.
I think the elephant in the room is the Batman Who Laughs.
Terry McGinnis.
No, it's that parallel universe shit.
Yeah. But I'm not gonna say because that was the movie, and I'm not gonna say anything anymore.
It wasn't a movie.
Spoiler. No,
a
Batman Beyond movie.
I mean,
Terry
all I have
laughed.
to do is
Terry laughed.
No, it's literally, you'll just give it.
No, I know what you mean, but I got confused because Terry laughed.
Oh yeah, he laughs
as a weapon. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. But that guy is it's literally for guys that don't know, it's literally a mixture of the worst parts of the Joker and the intelligence and the cunning of Batman. He pretty much kills everything. Everything.
Which is wonderful.
It is super dark.
It is super dark, but it's super good.
It's a ridiculous story.
But there's another Justice League one where they go into the future, and or is it in the past, or is it in a different dimension? Doesn't matter. But Terry was like, Batman meet Batman. Oh, this is weird. Because one was a younger Batman and one's his Batman.
That's one of the issues with time travel of if you're meeting another version of yourself, how does that impact you psychologically?
Hmm. Well, the younger Batman was trying to rough up information to get information from Terry's goons, and it didn't work. And the older Bruce Wayne, Kane, old, he goes, "I can't believe I was ever that green." He got all the information fast because he's
Yeah. Well,
badass.
I've got my second novel, which I've shelved because there were some things about it I haven't been able to work out. Dealt a lot with time travelers. And one storyline I had in that, the version of time travel I'm using is just there being alternate time streams, parallel streams that they can jump back and forth between. So, like, the two main characters wind up jumping to one of these streams where one of them, the woman, has died, and just the way they wind up coming back, they wind up bringing the other guy back with them. So it's like now this woman is there with two versions of her husband who are virtually identical, just some very slight differences,
Hmm.
and just kind of playing with that about, how they interplay against each other and, how they both still have a sense of feeling that they're married to this woman.
Okay.
When it comes to time travel, I prefer the you're you're only going to do what you were expected to do method of it, where you know if I were to go back in time and do something, I'm just doing what's already happened in my original time.
That's a very fatalistic model. Um, the model I work with is the idea that
Mm.
the hero is only there because there were time travelers. Because once they changed it, everything from that point was changed, so no one remembers that there had been a different version previous to that.
There's one anime, time traveling type of anime that I like, and that's The Girl Who Leapt Through Time.
Oh, I've
Uh,
I've seen that movie. No, I haven't
it's
seen it, but
it's very good.
Not familiar with
And
that.
the other, and I don't know if you would consider this to be time travel, but Groundhog Day, Bill Murray.
well, but I mean, what you're saying, Purple, is kind of what I mean. Like it's like I'm trying to describe it because it's basically like I think how they did it in well no because that was able to change the past and change the future. Um, it's like you live in a city where there's um a clock tower and the clock tower doesn't work because it was struck by lightning 12 years ago.
Hmm.
Well, you go back in time, and the reason that the clock tower was struck by lightning is because you went back in time and caused the lightning to strike the clock tower. Back to the Future was different because you could change the outcomes.
Yeah.
Hmm. Steins Gate was also very good. But I mean, I don't like um many. many stories that revolve around time travel because they usually have huge plot holes.
Hmm.
And I'm not
Yeah.
trying to discourage you, Purple. I'm try-
No. Well, like
I
I
know
say,
you're
that
into detail,
that was my
so
second novel that I had shelved several years ago because I realized it was causing several problems I couldn't find good solutions for.
yeah. I'm glad you noticed it and didn't just go,
Run with
it
it.
doesn't matter. They'll know what I mean.
It's
Well,
like
I
the
did get something out of it because actually the novel I'm working on now developed entirely out of an organization that was just mentioned in one paragraph of that second novel.
Oh,
So
interesting.
it's like creating a backstory for this organization has created an entirely new universe to write in.
That's very interesting.
it's like the time travel paradox or issue in Harry Potter.
Yes.
I think they kind of dealt with it,
No,
but I can't remember if they did.
not
It's been a while since I've read the
entirely.
book or seen the movie.
Well, they did have the time turner in one of the books.
Well, right, that's what I'm talking about. It's like there was the whole thing with if she could go back in time, why didn't she go back in time? If you can go back in time and change things, why not go back in time and warn somebody about Voldemort and have him actually dealt with?
Yeah.
She explained that there were rules, but at the same time, she also broke her own rules.
Hmm.
Consistency is important.
Yeah, for me consistency is the biggest thing. That I have a tremendous capacity for suspension of disbelief.
Right.
If a writer is going to describe a new world, it can have magic or whatever other scientific laws that don't apply to our world, as
But they
long
have
as
to
they
be
remain
consistent.
consistent with them.
That's it.
It's the internal inconsistencies that will bug the hell out of me and prevent me from enjoying a story.
It's very distracting because now I'm
Right.
keeping track of how many times you're going to break your own rules, as opposed to fully immersing myself in the story.
I was
Oh,
literally having a discussion about this same idea um, about a webcomic that I read, where this character's been shown to be able to go through grueling battle after battle, um, and basically be fairly unscathed. Um, but then they got to this point where she's gone through two battles with two like moderately leveled henchmen, and now she's fighting the bad guy and she's completely exhausted and everything, and it's like, but we've seen her go combat for half an hour to, fight with entire armies, but two one-on-one battles has exhausted her.
yeah, that's plot convenience. I don't like that.
Well, and like I told them, I said the author could have easily fixed it by just inserting a montage page that shows her defeating like six other people. Doesn't have to do the whole fight. Just six different combats to express the fact that she's supposed to be exhausted now. But what's done is done because they've already passed that part.
Yeah. One thing that
Robert X
drives
says
me
I wrote a book
crazy.
about time travel but became a bestseller, but I hated being famous, so I went back in time and destroyed it.
Haha. One thing that drives me crazy though is although characters breathe in habits and things like that, I don't like it when the writer has a habit.
What do you mean? Like a habit and something that they do when they write?
Yep.
Example, please.
Um there's a series that I've read where the character is constantly saying for the first time. And there's another one where it's width of a fingernail, width of a fingernail. It almost turns it into a drinking game. Or
Oh,
a
so they don't.
character who's frequently supposed to be calm, cool, and collected, being so shocked that they take a breath and they have to put that in there, and they've used it more than once when it's not in the character's persona, so
So
it's not shocking anymore when it happens.
it's more like just a lack of description of things. It's repetition in their descriptions and stuff.
I wouldn't say a lack of description. I would say lazy writing, just
Gotcha.
lazy, because there's so many ways to say for the first time.
Or that something is really small.
Yeah, a width of a fingernail. Okay, I'm gonna hold you down and punch you if you say it one more time. It's like what?
So
And
just
I've
repeating the same phrase too many times is annoying you.
right, and I kind of think that I almost want to know, are these self-published? Was there an editor? Because no editor would have let that through.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but the
you
thing
think that would have
about
been
that,
pointed out somewhere in the process.
you need to consider that authors are human, and humans have their own sentence structures and will repeat stuff.
Yeah, but that's why you have editors and you should have beta readers. You
Mm-hmm.
should have
And,
people who will, point out that you do this repeatedly, and because you do it so many times, it's distracting and a bit annoying.
or if there's a word that that you use a lot, and you're doing your thing in a text document, you can find it and be like, oh shit, I've said however 127 times in this chapter. I
Yeah.
need to I need to vary my. That would be an interesting program for authors. Is a program that will scan your text document for
It's already in there.
repeated
There.
phrases and words.
Oh well, yeah. But you can type in a word and you can find every instance of it
Right, but
in a
no,
lot of software.
what I mean is like if you're the kind of person who's going to say the same thing multiple times, you may not realize that you're using it too much. And what I'm talking about is a app that would
Yes, I
scan the
know.
entire document and say you've used
Uh,
hair's breadth 37 times,
Yeah.
and warn you, hey, you've used this phrase a lot.
right, but like you can type that into the word find and it will
Yeah.
find it for you.
Okay. Robert X is pointing out to me that I've only got 12 minutes to go to the top of the hour. So we need to wind this stream down. I'm going to be starting a separate stream for the race and character gender swap.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
we need to go around and do the sign offs here. Does anybody have anything they want to plug?
I actually do.
Wait. Let me go first because I have to leave because I have to come right back and I'm starving.
Okie dokie.
I'm Mikey Famine. The Deviants is my channel. I'm in the chat. Goodbye.
Bye. Nice
Bye,
talking to you.
Mikey. See you in 5 minutes, maybe.
Yep. Yeah, it would help if I can have a 5-minute break in between here. So,
Yeah.
okay, Pirate Kitty, you're excited about something.
I'm actually going to be on Neil the 604 Atheist show on February 19th at 4 p.m. Pacific time. Yeah, it's 4 o'clock because it's 7 o'clock Eastern. And so I'm going to be doing an interview. I am both freaked out and kind of excited.
Nice.
That's it.
Neil's a sweetie. He'll look after you.
Oh, my audio just went wonky.
I don't have anything to plug at the moment. So.
And Orla's just being creepy Orla on Twitter.
Yes, Dad.
Yes, but she's doing such a fabulous job of it.
I'm allowed to be creepy. It's fun.
Well, one of the things I often say is I have to be me. No one else is qualified for the position.
That's
Fair
a good
enough.
tagline. Be yourself. No one else is qualified for the job.
Yep. Okay. Well, let's wrap this up here so we can have a quick little break, and we'll be back in 10 minutes and discussing the race and gender swap.
Okay.
So
Okay.
there will be a new link for that. I'm going to have to start a new StreamYard link for that.
Okie dokie.
Mm-hmm.
So,
See you soon.
okay. Bye-bye, everyone. See you in a few minutes.
Okay. Bye.
Bye bye.
And broadcast.